after the game Sunday, you needed to decompress. It wasn't the moment to try to put a season into focus. So I'm just curious now, 48 hours later, I think. Yeah, 48 hours later. Can you sort of just give us some of your thoughts on what you think this season was?
Yeah, I feel like I still need some time to decompress. I will answer the best that I possibly can. Uh, you want to be able to be objective about all of it. And the first most important part about it is you come together to try to do something special. We are all here in that locker room to produce a result. And it's a bottom line business. We did not accomplish the goal that we set out for ourselves. However, with all that said, you also want to create memories. You want to have an enjoyable experience through an arduous, challenging 7 or 8 month season. You don't want to just go through a season and only focus on the bottom line and get to the playoffs and rely on something that is not guaranteed. This is a tough business. It's a tough challenge to be able to compete for an NBA title. It's the toughest thing any of us can try to do collectively in this business. But in terms of the day-to-day, interactions, and it's all of it, the good, the bad, and everything in between, was just a really gratifying and memorable season. I really enjoyed connecting with the guys in the locker room. I enjoyed experiencing the competition together. I enjoyed the handling of adversity, together without excuses, and experiencing things that we didn't anticipate because of the adversity. And we grew and got better because of it. And we became even closer, I think, because of all the adversity. And then along the way, we had a lot of laughs, a lot of joy, a lot of fun, some things that probably on the outside you don't necessarily think of with Heat culture, but that is a big part of it. You're going to be around each other, so much. More often, we're going to spend more time around each other and staff members and road trips away from home. You're going to spend more time with this group than we actually do with our real families. And so you want to be able to enjoy those relationships and grow and connect in a deep way. And I think we all did. And that'll go down as a great season to be able to go through it together, even without accomplishing our goal that we set out for ourselves.
Erik, obviously your young players always improve during an offseason. I was curious how the process will work with the guys in their 20s, Bam, Gabe, Max. Do you sit down with them, you and maybe even Pat, and say, here's where I want you to improve? And an older veteran like Bam, do you ask him, tell me what you'd like to incorporate, and then you okay it? How does that process work?
Yeah, that's definitely part of the process. That's not going to happen tomorrow. That won't happen next week. But we'll connect later on this month. And I always connect with the guys and communicate, a plan, for the summer and get their input on how they see things. And it ultimately has to be a collaboration, but there will be an intentional plan at the end of it, where we want to go with that. And that'll be with everybody. I mean, our young guys are going to have, the stereotypical Miami Heat player development program experience this summer. We get the full summer of it, get to ramp up for Summer League. By the time we get to early July, I think that'll be the appropriate time for all of us to look forward to something, and get over this and get past this, and now just really focus on the improvement of the young guys and the excitement of that. We've have so many examples of guys that have gone through a summer like this and have been able to totally transform into a much better player and more productive player, and that's fun. I love that process. For the mid-vet guys like Gabe and Bam, we'll put together a program for them, and we'll work with them, to put it, to execute it. And then the same thing with our veteran guys. We'll work with them and see where we can improve in the margins. I think what we've proven, it doesn't matter, what your age is. It doesn't have to be that cliche that you can only make big improvements your first 3 years of your career. That's not true. We've seen it, with guys in their 30s that have made significant improvements in their game. I think Jimmy's an example of that. I think, in his 30s, he's become a much better player from all the experiences, but also improvement in his skills and all the things that he can bring to the game. He's really improved in that regard, and so for all the guys on our roster, we'll be seeking major improvement, and then as a staff, I think some of the most fruitful and most important improvements that I've experienced as a head coach, fortunately and unfortunately, have come off of really disappointing ends to a season. And we'll get together as a staff and really try to learn from this and see where we can improve as well.
Spo, to go from leading the league in three-point shooting to 31% in the postseason, how hard is that to explain? And I guess how would you explain it if you could, just the drop-off from the regular season to the playoffs?
Yeah, I didn't look into it in depth with other teams as well. I have a couple things at the top of my mind. One, our team proved that we could win in a lot of different ways, and it doesn't have to just be with three-point shooting. The three-point shooting is a weapon for every team, and I think you've seen that in every series. Teams that would win the three-point game probably put themselves in a pretty good chance to win the game, and that's on both sides. If you had explosions from the three-point line and were able to limit the three-point shooting for the other team, the math just wouldn't add up at times. But then you also saw across the board, teams able to really win in the mud, and you certainly saw that with us. My other thought about that is just the level of scouting and attention to detail defensively in the playoffs. It increases exponentially. So some of those looks, even though they may have been described as open or lightly contested, that's a different open or lightly contested shot than if it happens in December or January. Our shooters will continue to work on their ability, to make shots under duress with shorter windows. But my initial thought, and I'll go into a full autopsy on that this summer. My instinct on that is, I think that was overplayed. Like, it still came down to a few possessions where we could have gotten into this next round regardless of that shooting. I know you can get stuck on that in percentages. Ultimately, it's about getting the win, and there's a myriad of different ways that you can, and also it is required, to be able to effectively find different ways to win in the playoffs. The defenses are just too good. You can't rely on one thing, regardless. That's just one thing, but also you can't just rely on your ability to get to the free throw line, your ability to attack, ability to get in transition. You have to have a lot of different solutions at different times during a series, and certainly against different opponents.
This team has always kept a standard for conditioning from Pat Riley onward, and has always stressed the older you get, the more vigilant you have to get. Did Kyle Lowry fully meet the Heat's conditioning standards this season? And as an older player who's going to be here at 37 and 38, is that something you need to work forward with him, like you've done with others, to maximize his contribution going forward?
Yeah, I mean, you have to take into the context everything. The missed games, injuries. It's not all apples to apples, and then trying to ramp up, as quickly as you possibly can in the middle of a series. These are not excuses. They're just, it's just the reality. I thought Kyle was in an incredible groove, about 6 weeks before the playoffs. I think for his example, if we could have started the playoffs then, it would have been a perfect time, for him. And then, next year, all our vets, the challenge will be how they can each come back, better. Maybe add a couple different things, to the game. I think Kyle will come back next training camp in the best shape of his career. That certainly is important, as you get further along in your career and into your 30s, conditioning and keeping your body, right. That's your ultimate opponent is Father Time. And Kyle understands that, as well as anybody. He trains hard. He really works at it, behind the scenes, and he does that during the season as well.
There's a lot of layers to this, and every season isn't apples to apples. There's injuries, but the last 3 teams that have beaten you all seem to have some similarities defensively. They've all been big. They've all kind of tried to take away your shooters. Are there any takeaways? Is there a through line between the defenses that have beaten you, and are there adjustments you want to make to the offense to try and counter that kind of?
Yeah, we'll take a deep dive into that. I would say I wouldn't view Boston and Milwaukee similar. Where you view them as similar is they both have championship quality defenses. They do it in different ways. The size factor, I felt less of that against Boston. It was more their versatility, switchability, guys that could guard multiple different positions, even though they weren't always in that switch scheme. Milwaukee was much more like really, protecting the rim. So it's just different things, but yeah, when I talk about you have to find different solutions, you have to have the versatility of your roster, you have to have a diversity of your menu to be able to find those solutions for whatever the opponent is presenting you. And you're only going to face great defenses by the time you get to the conference finals.
Eric, obviously Tyler had a great season, won 6th Man of the Year, and then had the injury in the playoffs. But he wasn't scoring to the level prior to the injury that he was in the playoffs that he did in the regular season. What do you make of Tyler's postseason as a whole?
Yeah, I think it was really important, to go through that. And every great player, has a journey in the playoffs. Everybody has a memory of great players just being immediately great in all these pressure moments, from the get-go. But you look at the history of the game, there always is, a process to it. And I think, Tyler's work ethic, his commitment, to studying and improving and working on his skill level, as teams are really starting to try to scheme against him, I think that's the ultimate compliment. What it proved to me in my eyes is that teams they see how important he is. They're not going to just let him play. And we saw basically 3 different schemes in 3 different series against him. And I think he just puts that, catalogs it in his brain and then goes to work on it. And I think that'll be really important, moving forward. His skill level is so high, and his work ethic, and how much he puts into it, he's only going to continue to get exponentially better during seasons, and then that'll translate to the playoffs. Skill and having a lot of different ways to attack offensively always plays well in the playoffs eventually. It might not happen exactly on the timeline, that a player or team may want it, but eventually you just can't contain that kind of skill.
So PJ seemed to be a known commodity when he got here, but what surprised you, in your first experience coaching him, and how important was he, not only to the defensively, but to what you guys did offensively?
He was so important all across the board. That competitive spirit, his competitive will, his consistent toughness that you could just count on every single day. And he has a way of communicating that and inspiring everybody in the locker room that is so genuine. And if you're just observing it from the outside, you're like, wow, that's intense. But to everybody in the locker room, it's a really special, genuine feeling. You know, when you have somebody that is that committed to winning and helping other guys. He's so unselfish, you know, as a player, always taking on the biggest challenges. Defensively, he'll do all the little things, the dirty work, the tough things, and never complain about it. He never complains or talks about his shots. He's just completely selfless, an absolute throwback player. That's why he's beloved, you know, by staff and everybody in the locker room. If I had to pick, you know, something that surprised me, it would be certainly the skill level offensively. That wasn't necessarily something that we were planning on. The adversity kind of brought it out, where we had to find different solutions offensively when we went through the injuries, and Jimmy and Bam were out, and we had a bunch of other guys out as well. We needed, you know, to put the ball somewhere. And he had mentioned to me, you know, when we went out to dinner in LA, that he had played point guard before when he played in Germany. And I laughed. I was with Chet. We were at dinner with him. And I was like, no way, were you a point guard? And he swore on it. And I said, okay, well, at some point we're probably going to have to find out. You know, we've had a lot of guys at that position where we let them handle and everything. And sure enough, about two weeks later, we started going through our injuries. We're like, all right, we're about to find out right now. You know, we're going to start using him as a trigger, have him handle more, play out of the post with him or at the elbows. And he was just sensational, you know, in those moments. It shouldn't have been a surprise to me. If you're that much of a high IQ player defensively and you see things happen before they happen, you have to have incredible instincts defensively and toughness, experience, competitive will. But to be really elite defensively also, you have to be able to see plays before they happen. And that's IQ. That's IQ for the game. That's intelligence for the game. And he has that, you know, times 10. And offensively, he has a great feel, even though, you know, he's mostly been a spot-up shooter, but he still knows how to get to spacing. He knows how to help your best players be great. And then, you know, why I say it shouldn't have surprised me. If you know how to do all those things, you definitely see the game in a deep level. And that's what we saw with him we eventually got to know him, and he really revealed that he could be a really good passer in our system, and that was fun to see.
Erik, Vic was saying he's looking forward to having a full summer, particularly on the offensive end, to try to regain everything fully that he had pre-injury. Could you please assess where he stands and if you think there's still a substantially higher level he can get to as far as offensive efficiency?
I mean, without a doubt. Coach Quinn showed me, look, I was aware of this. I'm fully aware because I've been with him for a full year. But that stat in the last 3 years, how many games that he had missed, and then, you know, how many regular seasons games he's played in the last 3 years, for him to do what he did in this playoff run is really unheard of. Really, to have no regular season games and not have a base of weeks and months to get in a rhythm and a flow and test your health, and then get into a rhythm. There was hardly any of that. He had some practices, you know, starting in January, February, but we weren't practicing a ton, so it was mostly a bunch of work, you know, behind the scenes. And then, you know, the quickest way for him to find his rhythm was defensively. His instincts, once he got healthy, he immediately, you saw his presence defensively and how impactful he could be. And then offensively, as the playoffs went on, that's how funny it is. Crazy. Like, he's getting in better rhythm, you know, in the most pressure-packed moments. But yeah, he has not had that summer of work, and Vic has a great work ethic. I've seen him over the years. You know, he's lived and worked in Miami. When he was healthy, I saw him work. And his capacity to work is extremely high. So he hasn't had a summer like this in probably, what, 4 summers? Yeah, you're going to see a totally different Vic next year by the time he gets to training camp. He's going into the summer, physically able, to work at his craft, and he'll get back to the player that people are accustomed to seeing.
The last time you guys reached these heights, there were other outside front office concerns that came into place. Jay Crowder fit in wonderfully, but there were other factors. This team, as composed, you have the ability to keep it entirely intact. I understand there's Pat and there's Andy and the other parts. Erik Spoelstra as coach, would you like to have another chance with this group intact as is to make a run, even if it means not adding what people outside might think is a personnel upgrade?
Yeah. Irene, you know me so well.
Too well.
You phrased that impeccably well. You did not leave me any gaps, it is a Pat thing, but look at the history of how we've done things since Pat and Mickey have created this culture. Anytime we're close, and have banged on the door, and even if it ended on a disappointing loss, our history has shown that we usually bring, the majority of the group back, the core back, and we take another shot at it. Of course, you're talking 48 hours, and after we had an opportunity, on a make or a miss to possibly potentially get to the next round, yeah, you want to have, a chance to do it again with the same group. I love this group. I love the locker room, and I'm just really grateful that we had an opportunity, to collaborate and work together and experience everything, this season. It's a beautiful profession we live in, and it's been crazy, all around, the world, and dealing with everything we've been dealing with. But for us to be able to do what we do and do this together with a bunch of like-minded people, in terms of how we view competition, man, it doesn't get much better than that. And I'm just, I'm really grateful for this year and this season. It made me better, and I really enjoyed it. I filled out a lot of my journal entries in a positive way from these experiences.
All right, Coach, thank you.
All right, appreciate all of you. We will see you probably in Summer League, right? All right. You can catch me in a very casual way in Vegas. All right. Maybe we all can get out for a coffee or a beverage or something. All right. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much.